wonderful, wonderful product. So, joining me on camera now is someone that I haven't had an opportunity to speak to in a little bit. But today, as it was reported widely on LaProv, it's been reported that Speaker Mattiello has been conducting, as he is the Speaker of the House, as his will, to extend the negotiations with the Pawtucket Red Sox Baseball Club. Anyone who's ever listened to this show knows that going back to what we call Paw Sox 1.0, is that we are simultaneously in love with the Paw Sox as a concept, as a team, as a current stadium, but at the same time, we challenge and we openly defy the government to spend taxpayer money. By the way, this is my words, not my guess, but someone who firmly believes that taxation is in fact theft, to use money taken through coercion from individuals and redistribute it to a private business. While we all agree that the Pawtucket Red Sox are a valuable member of the community, at the same time they are a private entertainment business, and as such should not be the recipient of the largesse, if you will, of a citizenry in Rhode Island that is clearly struggling financially. If you believe, as I do, that government has limited roles, you will agree. Or if you believe that government has an extensive place in society, well, you'll agree. Regardless of the effort, the intention, the goodwill of the Pawtucket Red Sox Baseball Club, there are priorities to where money taken from the citizenry needs to be spent. It's nice to have a baseball stadium. It's nice to have a baseball club. Ultimately, we don't need to. We need to address the educational failure that's taking place in Rhode Island. We need to address our crumbling infrastructure. We need to address this overarching bureaucracy that has taken our government hostage and places, if you will, quite frankly, the will and the needs of the citizenry as second-class citizens in favor of those few, or as I call them, the true 1% of Rhode Island, that is state government, and those who would be in collusion with them. Their needs are secondary. We need to make Rhode Island a better place to do business, a better place to grow up, a better place to be educated. We have a lot of work in front of us. It took generations for Rhode Island to reach the point that it is now, where independent authorities have judged it to have the highest rate of poverty in New England, astonishingly enough. And it will take generations to work our way out of it. We should not be distracted and should not be focusing on connected, wealthy corporations who would use their connections to grow, quite frankly, at our expense. But then again, that's the attitude, if you will, of your host. So, joining me for the first time in quite a while is Sharon Steele. Sharon is the founder and president of Building Bridges Providence. She has got a number of other civic engagements that we're going to talk about in the coming few minutes. But we'll talk about the Paw Sox for just briefly, and then we want to move on, if you will, to some of the development that's taking place downtown that is, quite frankly, equally as troubling. Sharon, welcome back to the Coalition.
Thank you so much, Pat. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, we saw the article by Kate Nagel and her hardy crew here at Go Local, and kudos to them for reporting on it. I believe that the Go Local Prov has been one of the few real honest brokers of information in this. And while they have published polls that are highly negative, if you will, to the prospects of the stadium and where it stands with the taxpayers, I don't believe they've had an agenda as other major media outlets have. I give them all the credit in the world for that. A lot of that is a reflection of just good old-fashioned reporting. What's your reaction to Speaker Mattiello's reinitiation, if you will, of dialogue with the Pawtucket Red Sox?
Well, I guess you can say I'm not surprised. Mm-hmm. There is an extraordinary amount of pressure that is being brought by labor, mm-hmm. by the construction industry,
right.
by the Senate and the Senate president. that they very much want this to happen in Pawtucket. And they want it sooner than later. As the speaker knows, he came off a very tough fight in his last bid, and that his constituents, as the polls have shown, are not in favor of taxpayer money going to 10 extraordinarily wealthy individuals
Right.
to pursue their personal agenda.
Right.
I'm going to sort of start with something that I wrote actually in January of 17, from which I'm also going to sort of pick and choose some of the topics we discussed. And it's a brief history of the Pawsox and the relationship. And so what was it about? A group of 10 extraordinarily wealthy and influential businessmen, not women by the way, but men, decided they wanted to have a brand new shiny stadium on Parcel 4, the site of our public park, that was conceived and promised in 2006 and funded along with the Pedestrian Bridge as part of the I-195 corridor development. A group of interested citizens banded together, you remember that, something called a grassroots effort, and we summarily defeated the stadium. Thank you very much. After we were told it could never be done, let me say. Many times we were told.
A lot of people owe me cups of coffee.
And me as well. Okay, so fast forward. It is now in Pawtucket, and because I am a Providence resident, and because this is no longer really in my wheelhouse, what I am saying to you is sort of my personal assessment of where we are at the moment, and I'm certainly not speaking for anyone really but myself. And that is that it is totally understanding that Speaker Mattiello needs to listen to the continuing or participate in the continuing discussion with the Pawsox ownership and management, and that is in everyone's best interest. At the end of the day, I am hopeful that that he will do the right thing. And I am hopeful that he will do the right thing because we are not saying that we don't want the Pawsox to be here. We are not saying that we don't want that stadium in Pawtucket. We are not saying we want nothing but the best for development in Pawtucket, with every great thing that's happening there, starting with the new train station, okay? We want it for them, but we want it for them paid for by those 10 private investors. Not on the backs of Rhode Island, not on the backs of our taxpayers. I think we've had quite enough of that in Rhode Island.
Right.
So I applaud the fact that he is listening and that he is in a dialogue and that he is attempting to get the best information he can, and certainly he has put pressure on the Pawsox ownership and leadership that they need to bring a better deal to the table. So let's hope that they will, because we know that they can. The question is, do they have the will?
Do you think it's fair to say, and I ask everyone this question, if the owners of the Pawtucket Red Sox, most of them who have been conspicuously absent from the scene, and I'm talking about Terry Murray, for example, I'm not aware of a single hearing, public hearing, please, if anyone out there wants to correct me, feel free, a single public hearing where he and Mr. Ryan of CVS fame, two extraordinary successful individuals, who by all accounts did it fairly and honestly,
Absolutely.
for whom there is no attempt to impugn their personal honor, who have been completely AWOL from at least a public discussion of this. Those individuals, if they chose to, in fact, wake up tomorrow morning and all get together on a piece of land next to and somewhere in the bucket and say, you know what? How to change your heart? We're just going to build a damn stadium on our own. Do you think they'd be folk heroes overnight?
Instantly. Without question. Instantly.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems to me that that's what we need right about now. We need some heroes.
We need a hero. How's the song go? We need a hero.
Because God knows, you can look around right now and it's a pretty sad state of affairs. And I'm not speaking locally, but I am speaking nationally. Mm-hmm. Though we probably shouldn't be talking about this, but let's just say...
I think you and I, we may come from different sides of the aisle, but I think you and I are in agreement on a lot of issues.
Okay, terrific. So
I'm a libertarian. I didn't vote for this guy.
Well, nor did I. Okay, so now that we have that out for,
right.
you know.
Well, the other reason I want to have you here, and this is, you know, shame on me. Although in my defense, I'm going to say that right now in this state, you have to play political whack-a-mole. There are issues, and by the way, I'm cynical enough to believe that this is intentional. That, and at my age, advanced age, I don't believe in coincidences. That issues constantly arise on the battlefield of civil life that it's overwhelming. If, you know, when I look across the community activists that I've met, and by the way, community activist is a wonderful term, because most of the community activists I've met will never ever realize a single penny from any. I was talking about this to someone on the way in tonight, that how simpler it would have been for many of us 20 years ago to say, you know what, screw it, I'm going to mail it in, I'm going to get me that state job, I'm going to get me that Rhode Island packy, I'm going to retire to Florida, on to pension, sell scratchies at night, and how much easier life would have been just to cave.
But it's not in your DNA.
Yikes.
Not mine either.
Right, so you have an issue, and I think you're going to refer to it as 38 Tower.
How did you know?
So I'm gonna dial this back about a year or so.
Okay.
And a developer appeared in town, you know, on the you know, not one of the good guys from this is me speaking. I'll let you then hold court here.
Okay.
Who came up with, I believe, a mushroom-induced, and I'm using mushrooms in the 1968-69 Haight-Ashbury reference.
We are dating ourselves here.
Hey, 70+ Grateful Dead concerts, and the chemistry to prove it.
Okay.
All right? So, who in this mushroom-induced haze announced that he was going to build, I don't know, a tower to the skies, a Tower of Babel, if you will.
Right? A triple tower.
Right. Here in the heart of Rhode Island. Now, and again, my commentary, in a state that is so, a real estate scene that is so convoluted, so hopelessly out of economic whack on so many different levels because of these cross-current of subsidies and privileged developers and on and back and forth, and it just seemed like kind of what would they call it in literature, a fever dream?
Pipe dream?
That's a good one too.
I'll take that one.
All right, so you had this, and then it was summarily dismissed in many corners. Yet, as is so often the way in Rhode Island, it became a stealth issue, operating so quietly behind the scenes, not privy to the type of harsh public eye that it deserves. And if it were not for you and folks you work with, would have probably we would have woken up one day to the madness, and we would have said,
"What happened?
What happened? Huh?" Actually, the kids would say, since we're on the radio, they'd say WTF.
Oh, there you go.
All right.
But we'll keep this quite clean.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So, what's going on?
Okay. Well, you gave me a fabulous handoff, so I'm going to start by saying, from the people who brought you 38 studios and then 38 stadium, we now bring you 38 Tower.
38 Tower.
It used to be 38 towers, but now it's 38 tower.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I draw an analogy? Is it not unlike a large outstretched middle finger to the city of Providence?
It's so funny because we have gotten, we did a poll, which I'm going to talk about
Okay.
as part of this. And that description was applied, let's just say more than once.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, so here we go. So this started back in January of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So, and as you said, it was there, and at that point it was 3 towers,
Mm-hmm.
and then it sort of went underground.
Right.
Okay. Now, what was this about? The Fane group, Jason Fane and his sister Daria, are the developers of this. And in order to do this, this is on parcel 42.
Okay.
Parcel 42 is on Dyer. It is a skinny rectangle that is carved out of parcel 4, which is our beloved park.
Right.
And I'm going to remind you that we at Building Bridges Providence,
Mhm.
which is our nonprofit that we started actually way back in stadium days.
Right.
And we like to call that the cabal.
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to pay tribute to the people who continue to this day to be my brothers and sisters on this team, because they are the people who are the activists who continue to make this thing happen.
Mm-hmm.
But hold that thought for a minute. So what we have now is the 3 towers have gone away. We have a situation where Mr. Fane would like to build a 46-story tower, give or take 460 odd feet, in a zone that allows, that's 46 stories, in a zone that allows, let's just say, somewhere between 8 and 10,
Mhm.
depending upon what the floor height, floor to ceiling range is.
Right.
Okay? So, zoning says 100. He wants 460. So this isn't a variance. This is, let's take the zoning ordinance and let's just throw it away. Okay? This is almost a classic example of spot zoning. A perfect classic example of spot zoning.
Right.
Because what does spot zoning do? It sets a precedent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's think back. The zoning ordinance we have now in play is just about 3 years old. 3 and 3 months, let's say. We spent 3 years prior to that with the planning department,
Mm-hmm.
having charrettes and workshops,
Right.
and sitting down with every neighborhood and talking about what are the best practices in the country,
Mm-hmm.
what are the important things to preserve the quality of life, right? We want to create this extraordinary, innovative district.
Right.
And what does that mean? It means that we need to make that a centerpiece, the hub of an entire part of the city where millennials come to live, to work,
Mm-hmm.
to play. Okay? These are people who take Uber. They don't want cars, they don't have cars.
Mm-hmm.
These are the people who will fill Wexford Science and Technology, an extraordinary 7-story building on parcels 22 and 25. The topping off was last week. It was an amazing ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
Respectful of our zoning ordinance, 7 stories.
Right.
7, count them 7. A wonderful place for City Park
Mm-hmm.
to come across their property and cross Dyer and then march across our park to the Pedestrian Bridge,
Right.
which we started in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, It will be delivered in October of this year. You were going to say.
And I can remember the picnics you guys had in these open fields, and people would walk by, but what it represented on a larger scale, if you're a fan of cities like I am, I love cities.
So do I.
All right, cities are not just the sum of the people who live there, but they're living, breathing organisms unto themselves. And I've been blessed that I've lived in a couple of great cities. I've had time. I've lived in New York City, and I've lived in Providence. And to me, New York City is an example of a world-class great city. You don't need me to tell you that. Providence is an example of a world-class great small city.
Correct.
The problem I've always had with Boston is it's, particularly since Cambridge has become, and Southie, I forget what they call it now, but has become so homogenized and gentrified, is that Boston has lost a lot of that classic feel, that community feel. You'd have to really, if you're a fan of Boston, you'd really have to go down Center Street to West Roxbury and maybe a little bit of Roslindale to see really the only two neighborhoods that are still kind of
some of that feel.
Have that feel. And so what's frustrating about, and I'll just draw in just for a moment, the Route 10 situation. The Route 10 situation and the area that you're talking about is this represents really a once in a millennial opportunity to redefine or to set the stage for how that city is going to move forward. My particular disappointment with Route 10, I don't want to go off on that tangent, was that rather than sit back and say, okay, let's focus on what our vision for that land is, in a rush to create political jobs, my comment, not yours, all right? In a rush to create politically associated jobs, we missed an opportunity to redefine how people move about that central core of Rhode Island for another few generations. So it's critical that we look at this land. You'd have to look up to the Rose Kennedy Greenway to see a similar example here in the Northeast.
Yes.
In literally the oldest part of the nation, for whom blank open spaces without tremendous destruction of neighborhoods simply will never happen again. To miss that opportunity because of short-sighted urban planning, because of just a absence of conscience mixed in with an absence of imagination, is
deadly.
Not only troubling, it's decimating.
It is deadly.
We don't get there are no redos on this. And to your comment about spot zoning, we've seen that in other parts of the country where, a strip mall comes in, and much like if you're a Star Trek fan of a certain age, the trouble with tribbles is that strip malls seem to, in the middle of the night, give birth to other strip malls, right? I don't know that anyone is looking for, even if it was economically sustainable, Providence to turn into a mini New York City. I'm not aware of anyone who sees that as a positive vision. Mix in the questionable economic sustainability of it, and you've got a recipe for disaster.
That is correct.
But please, continue.
That is, you, again, you have gotten there in one, and what we have here is we have something that we're not saying ought not to be in Rhode Island. We are saying ought not to be on this parcel, okay? When zoning was planned and envisioned, the height was going to start at the river, as great cities, Paris, Amsterdam, all over the world, where that have rivers at their center, Chicago, okay? And what are we going to do? We're going to build with scale and mass so that we are slow growing on the edges, and we build to the outer limits.
Like an amphitheater.
That's exactly right. Okay, so are there other places where the Fanes can build this? Absolutely. Would people be excited about that? Probably yes. Some of us could even be supportive of that. But the reality is that they want to build it here. Now, Why? Well, it would be great to have the best parcel, wouldn't it? Right? But if I'm a really great real estate developer and 42 is the best parcel, then I would hold that out to the very end. I would have a wonderful bridge. I will have would have a fabulous park, and then let's find the absolute best thing that we can place on parcel 42.
Which raises the question, whatever happened to the 195 Commission?
They are still there, and let me say this to you about that, though, again, my personal opinion. We are working with a commission now that came to be under Governor Raimondo. I can say to you that I probably have gone to every single I-195 commission meeting since the commission was formed under Governor Chafee.
God bless you.
God bless you.
Holy
I'm
cow.
just a masochist. What can I tell you? Okay, so the reality is, and again, my opinion, we now have the benefit of the best commission that we have had from the beginning. We have a chair in the name of Robert Davis, who is extraordinary at what he does. He's an attorney, originally from Needham in Massachusetts, knows development, represented a lot of developers, understands the language, understands what we're trying to do. The commission has a very tough job because on the one hand, they are literally the planners, right? And on the other hand, they are the sellers of real estate, okay? So it's really difficult to serve those two masters. And the kinds of things that we need here don't come overnight. So there was lots of infrastructure that had to happen in the I-195 corridor, underground utilities, lots and lots and lots of work, lots of engineering. So basically, for the beginnings of the last commission, they dealt with all of the infrastructure issues. Everybody, of course, wants it to happen now.
Right.
Instant gratification. This kind of a development not only cannot be done that way, it ought not to be done that way, okay? This is slow and deliberate to make the best decisions we can make for the absolute best developments we can on specific parcels. Okay, who is not happy with that? Well, the legislature's not happy with that because it's just not fast enough. But I would ask everyone to look that since Governor Raimondo has been here, totally by her side with Stephen Pryor, who is the Secretary of Commerce, we have had literally 23 new projects come to us in 24 months. Now that's not a bad track record, okay? A lot of people will disagree with me, but I have to tell you something. If we could literally create in that I-195 corridor, smack in the middle of the jewelry district, if we could literally create what has been done, just a little bit of what has been done in Kendall Square in Cambridge, with the likes of GE, Johnson & Johnson, Cambridge Innovation Center, Wexford Science and Technology, Brown School for Professional Studies, all of those things that will bring jobs, fabulous jobs, incubators, new development, biotech. That is what we need. That's what's going to drive the economy, okay? Residential housing was not ever part of the mandate for the I-195 corridor. So maybe we could spend a little time talking about that.
And if I can jump in for a second.
Go for it.
It might be a good time to reflect back briefly on the history of the 195 corridor. Because, you know, first of all, there's a lot of new people in town.
Yes.
And, you know, it's funny, Rhode Island, on one hand, whenever we give directions, we point out the places that used to be.
Absolutely.
There's going to be a lot of people pointing to Benny's, where Benny's used to be now, sadly.
Right.
But at the same token, it's almost this instant amnesia. As someone who's lived in the state now for 25 or 30 years, I don't even remember the old Washington Bridge.
You don't?
Nope. It's already, I'm just so used to this because I drive so much during the day that it's become sort of a blur. And, it was only a few short years ago that when you took a left outside the coffee exchange, all right, you faced this muraled, graffitied, sometimes kind of creepy bridge that bisected, what the quite frankly, the adult entertainment community out on Allen's Avenue and that sort
Still
of
there.
post-dystopic industrial nightmare
Yep,
from College Hill.
that is correct.
And that bridge is gone. So how did we get here? I mean,
How did we get here? Well, there was a Mayor Cianci.
or is it
Buddy.
Vincent A. Buddy Cianci,
Vincent A. Buddy Cianci.
as the Providence Journal will always refer to him as.
Exactly. And I must say,
Can we toast Buddy?
here's my water.
Yeah,
Let's toast Buddy, okay? Because he did a lot of good things.
But I believe his lasting heritage will not be the political madness, the craziness. That'll always be part of the culture here. But to me, and you're the expert here on urban planning, and you bring a lot to the table in this. But it always struck me that Buddy, whether it be through the advice he was given or himself, intuitively recognized that American cities would no longer be centers of commerce. They would become centers of entertainment. And to its credit, Providence was one of the first cities that really capitalized on that.
Correct.
By moving and encouraging entertainment, whether it be restaurants, Trinity, somehow getting Trinity to survive, PPAC, all of that, and bringing them to the heart of downtown, and simultaneously allowing colleges to flourish downtown.
Absolutely.
Because that would create a culture. Cultures, by definition, aren't something that you can dial up and download. Cultures have to happen, and to me, this is one of the most overused words of the millennium, is organically.
Organically.
But they have to, because it's that weird science, that mix of, because for example, it depends on what kind of college that you have. If you look at a town like Providence, we are much more directly reflection, ironically, of RISD than we are perhaps any of the other universities downtown. And to a certain extent Brown, and very much so JWU, because the kids live downtown, but it's that RISD ethic, ethos, if you will, that is just seeped through all of downtown. Guys like Bart Kranke at AS220, people like that who were the true urban pioneers. Guys like Rudy Cheeks, for example, on his own unique level. They were the urban pioneers that created sort of this crazy, artistic, slacker, hipster, political, edgy town that we call Providence, and that clearly some of us love. Every week I have this show, it's an ode, if you will, to the city of Providence. So 195 existed. It was ripped down.
That's right. The highway went away thanks to the federal government and lots of wonderful help with funding.
But that's part of the chemistry here.
Yes.
There is a, I don't want to call it baggage because that's a bad word, but there are requirements, baggage, feelings, issues that come along with that federal funding.
Absolutely.
That created this land. They didn't just write us a check and say, "Here, run with it," did they?
They did not. It was a long time in coming. The same way that we can pay homage to Bill Warner, who created the extraordinary Green Necklace and the river walks and all of the amazing things. And of course, back to Buddy, the relocation of the rivers.
Right.
Okay? So Providence was on the move. I mean, we were literally doing things that other people were just dreaming about. And we made them happen.
Through sheer force of will.
Through sheer force of will. This little place did that through sheer force of will. And all we're trying to do is literally hold the people around us now to that same high standard.
Absolutely.
To do the right thing.
To fulfill the vision that was created a generation ago.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Post 1980s into the early 90s. At the beginning of, as we like to say it here, Buddy 2.0.
There you go. There you go.
And realize that vision.
And we can. We can, okay? We are blessed. Brown, RISD, okay? Jay Wu, Roger Williams, URI, Rick, South Street Landing, extraordinary. I mean, an absolute celebration of historic rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been in it?
Not yet, no.
Please.
I'm not invited to many government things.
You don't have to be. Here's what I'm going to tell you. We have our Jewelry District Association meetings every month on the second Tuesday. That would be next Tuesday at 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
You come to room 498 and you will get to see South Street Landing, because Brown University has allowed us as part of the community, because now the Jewelry District really is the Brown University campus.
Right.
Is the Jewelry District campus of Brown University.
In a sense, that's Brown's Austin.
You're absolutely correct. And kudos to Brown, because they are doing an amazing job, an absolutely amazing job. And as a partner and as our largest and I would say most important stakeholder, there isn't a day that goes by that we don't interface with them in some way and collaborate with them. And so kudos to them. And RISD now is literally stepping up to the plate with a whole new community affairs department.
Right.
And they will be presenting their master plan actually next Tuesday at our Jewelry District meeting. So there's amazing synergy. There's amazing stuff happening right now in the Jewelry District. And we want only the best of the best.
Now, and quite frankly, the city deserves it for once in their lives.
Absolutely, okay? Instead of the extraordinary negativity, because sometimes the only people who appreciate this amazing place would be people who haven't always lived here.
Right.
And who can compare it to something else.
I spend a lot of time traveling, and I love cities. Just to me, they're a piece of art unto themselves. And when I go to, and I spend a lot of time in Boston, and when I look at what Cambridge has become, for example, sort of overrun, what accessibility, affordability, standard of living at this moment in time, in so many ways, Rhode Island, and particularly parts of Providence, have got it hand over fist.
I could not agree with you more.
Yeah.
And if we do this right with the I-195 Commission, if we make the hard, the tough decisions, no one will be able to hold a candle to us. Okay, because we won't do what Boston did with the overdevelopment, okay? We will pay attention to massing and to density. We will respect our historic preservation. People like the Fanes say, we need something iconic. We're gonna put Providence on the map. Well, from my perspective, Roger Williams did that in 1636, so I don't think we really have to worry about that much.
Yeah.
And Mr. Fane has been, he has actually said, and we can quote it if we go back to Projo, that who needs grass and a couple of benches? If you know anything about the Project for Public Spaces in New York,
Right.
and you know the amazing work that they've done all over the world.
I started working in New York City in the mid-'80s when the Project for Public Spaces really took root. And so when you, even amongst Midtown Manhattan, which is, not an oasis by any stretch, you will walk into buildings and you will walk between buildings and you will see carved out these amazing spaces where people can live despite being trapped in the asphalt jungle of Manhattan, right in the heart of some of the most densely populated parts of Manhattan.
Right.
Are amazing spaces.
Right,
You don't have to travel to Central Park.
right.
Right? It's merely, you can grab a sandwich and you can, just de-stress right there. And I'm talking about multinational organizations like Citigroup and recognizes the Rockefeller Center. They recognize this. All of these folks understood that, and they, of course, were going back to the visions of and if you were to look at an overhead map of New York, they've got their own park, if you will, stretching throughout the length of the city. They recognized, because remember, New York City's roots, ultimately, if you go back to the 18th century, was a lot of poverty,
Yep.
a lot of congestion, disease, high infant mortality rates. It was a terrible place to live. Outside of a few of the most prestigious neighborhoods,
Correct.
it was horrible. And yet, despite the highest exponential rate of growth of any American city, quickly, because understand that most of New York City's quote unquote explosion took place, between the time of the Flatiron District and Rockefeller Center. In that period of time, you don't even need the fast motion camera, and it just happens.
That's exactly right. So if you think about the Kents, for instance, okay, who literally are the people who run the Project for Public Spaces right now, and you look at all the work that they do, we are creating in the Jewelry District, in that I-195 corridor, what everyone else all over this country desperately wants and needs. Okay, we have it. It was a gift. All of a sudden we had this wonderful acreage smack in the middle of this city, surrounded by this green necklace, adjacent to an extraordinary river where Barnaby Evans has brought water fire. And if you've traveled anywhere in the country, or for that matter these days anywhere in Europe, you say Providence, they say water fire, or sometimes fire water. But that has put Providence on the map. And why? Because it's an extraordinarily important resource, because people need to live and flourish where they work. Why, when GE built or is building in Boston, they demanded that every so many floors there had to be outside space, that there had to be this amazing park below, because they wanted their employees to be able to come out into the sun with their coffee and collaborate.
Because ultimately, the success of the American economy going forward is no longer manufacturing based, it's creativity.
It's entrepreneurs.
Right. It's the ability to collaborate and to simultaneously innovate,
Correct.
which is going to be the engine of economic growth.
Correct. And what is the I-195 corridor all about? That.
Yep.
Exactly what you said. Okay? In order to deliver that, we have to stay true to what we're supposed to be doing here. And what we're supposed to be doing here goes back to what the Commission's statute authorizes. So I'm going to bore you for a couple of minutes.
No, this is why we do this.
This is the basis. The Commission statute authorizes the sale or lease of the land under its control in ways that are, and I quote, most advantageous to the public interest, which shall mean that the sale or lease of all such surplus parcels of land at fair market value and the reuse and development of such parcels will be beneficial to the city of Providence and to the state to support or encourage workforce development, education and training, and the growth of knowledge-based jobs and industries such as research and development, life sciences, media technologies, entrepreneurship, business management, design, hospitality, software design, and application, and a variety of other uses consistent with a knowledge-based economy. Did you see residential housing in there?
No.
Did you see luxury housing in there?
Nope.
I didn't either.
Right.
Okay.
Because ultimately, the ancillary point is job creation does not occur, and the level and sophistication of the job creation will not occur by providing simply additional places for a few service sector-like jobs, which are lower pay, but also, as importantly, are not want to spontaneously generate innovation, growth, technology, thought. Quite frankly, it acts to defeat the entire purpose.
Precisely. Okay? South Street Landing, 800 people there every single day. Wexford, when they're up and running, 600 people, 700 people, okay? That's what we need. That's what will jumpstart this economy.
Mm-hmm.
We now have, in Providence, about 1,000 housing units in the pipeline. Remember that old sort of real estate kind of, the foundation called absorption? This is still Providence. It's not Boston.
Mm-hmm.
It's sure not New York, okay? Do you remember the days of Water Place?
Right.
And the towers? Okay. They had a sort of a tough go of it.
It's still dorm space, isn't it, a lot of it?
Not Water Place,
Okay.
but yes, but there's another area over there that is in fact dorm space. You're thinking about closer to the train station.
Right.
Okay, but what happened? They became rental units. They brought down the median cost of rental for everybody else, whether it was the Promenade or it was the Regency or it was whatever, okay? So at this point, we don't know what this new single tower will look like. We don't know what the component is. When there were 3 towers, there were about 1,000 units. So let's say we're talking about 300 units. Well, takes a long time to absorb those units, and we are talking luxury housing. Now, I don't know what their definition of luxury housing is, but RES did an economic study for the I-195 Commission, and they basically said that they had to literally, they adjusted downward the townhouse sale prices downward to $500 a foot. The condominium sale prices down to $800 a foot. Folks, we are not getting those prices today.
Right.
Okay? So how many well-to-do folk who live in Providence, are we gonna empty out the east side? No. How many people want to be in that kind of luxury environment, pay a very, very, very high rent, condo fees if they're condos? How many of those people do we have here?
And here's my frustration as a libertarian and as a free market person. You have a couple issues here. When you provide subsidies, and subsidies can take many forms. They can be in the form of a tax stabilization agreement. They can be also in the form of giving premier land to an organization. You interfere with the dynamics of the free market. This city desperately needs affordable housing.
Yes, it does.
Affordable housing will only come to this city when it's either through massive subsidies, which typically fail, or through a free market that demands it. When the free market demands affordable housing, yet at the same time the market is perverted in the form of whether it be high-priced lofts or whether it be gigatowers being built, there's no economic incentive for developers on a free market, freestanding basis to create more affordable housing. The action is always going to be where the taxpayer money or space and or money in space is going to be. So as a result, you continue to have an issue on the south end and the west end where there are amazing opportunities to develop if in fact you could simultaneously ratchet up the income levels of the folks there and then make it affordable, or I should say make it attractive for developers to focus their efforts there as opposed to constantly beating the same dead horse downtown, which is to create and further enhance a market for which there appears to be, at least from an outsider's perspective, little or no demand.
Okay, so let's piggyback on something very important that you said, which is the housing component rather of this. And that is that in order to ratchet up what's happening in those other areas, whether it's the south side or the west side or whatever, okay, we need jobs.
Right.
We need good paying jobs, okay. The wonderful thing about what's happening with Wexford and that kind of development is there's all kinds of jobs, from lab techs to, the wide range, but more money more median income than Rhode Island has seen in a very long time.
Okay.
And that's what we need. Okay, that will then allow that housing to happen
Right.
naturally. Okay,
Right. Organically.
organically.
Right.
That's exactly right, that word that we like.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does Fane need here? Needs big TSA, tax subsidy. Big, big, big tax subsidy.
How many? And we're going to take a quick break, and I want to hold you to that thought because
Okay.
you now mentioned as far as on Friday nights from 6 to 9, the three dirtiest word in the English language is in this room right now is tax subsidies. All right, because ultimately it's this. We are addicted like crack in this town to tax subsidies.
Yes, we are.
We have folks who are professional developers, professional managers, and I should say, who are constantly reapplying for tax subsidies for buildings that they created years ago. We're going to get into that. I do want to take a quick break right now. Folks, you are in fact listening to the Coalition. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn free, civilly disobedient media. As always, we broadcast live on the worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center in the heart of the city we love, 90 West Boston Street in Providence, Rhode Island. It's a little bit of a chilly evening. It's still early, but it's always a wonderful night, whether it be to spend time in what I call Rhode Island's own buffet, that is Thayer Street, where a unique combination of restaurants and entertainment and, well, quite frankly, the live-in entertainment, that would be your Brown University College students, takes place. If you want to go over just past the jewelry district to what I'll call the nightclub district, clubs like Evo and clubs like the Coliseum provide a lively form of entertainment well into the evenings. And as we mentioned, there are other neighborhoods to the west of town. But whatever your personal, I don't know, hobbies or interests may lie, Providence affords all of them. Because like we like to say on the Coalition, there are more ways to sin in Providence than probably just about any city alive.
Whoa,
So-
I was not ready for that.
So take some time, come downtown, Thayer Street, downtown, over by the jewelry district. It's a great city to hang in. And I am living testament to the fact that you don't have to be a hipster
There you go.
to hang out in Providence. Because if this Family Guy lookalike can hang out and have a good time in Providence, then
Anybody can.
Anybody can. Joining us for the first time in too long, and this is clearly the great point. When the last time you were on our show, it was an hour. We were on radio. We called it Coalition 1.0. Now we have 3 hours on Friday nights where, largely commercial free, we can really get into articles. I call this show sometimes Wonk Central because you can get as deep as you want as a guest into the issues here and really have the opportunity to give full explanation. She's at the head of the Building Bridges at Providence. She's involved with you're the head of the president of the Jewelry District. Two of the most critical components of what I call quality of life here in Providence now and into the future. Because ultimately, the Providence that you see 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, that hopefully somehow we can manage to keep our kids or bring our kids back to, will be the Providence that you and your organizations, if not create, certainly shape, mold, and occasionally beat into place. So
Yes, into submission.
If need be. Welcome
Correct.
back to the Coalition, and we're just about to dive into TSAs, which to me are the devil. I'm within eyeball of where we are right now. I see TSAs everywhere, tax stabilization agreements, where connected developers, and there's a whole question I want to talk about with your issue, developer versus manager. Developers have used TSAs to, I believe, artificially skew the marketplace in terms of what organic, and that's the word seemingly tonight, organic demand for housing and or retail space. How bad is the TSA requirement here? And as part of that, if you can get into the Fane organization, again, shame on me, as we mentioned earlier in the show, there's a whack-a-mole element to this, and that's why you're here tonight. How much of their history is based on development versus ongoing management?
I am not an expert, but I can tell you that the TSAs, it's mostly development, have obviously played an enormous role. They have done lots of stuff in Ithaca, New York. And while we're on this subject, I really would encourage you to go to 38tower.com because there is a wealth of information. This is
38tower.com. That's outstanding.
it is, we are bringing you 38tower.com.
Yeah.
So please go there, everyone, and learn more about Fane. We have articles that we have posted from how the people of Ithaca feel about TSAs and things like that. And could these people do these developments without TSAs? Absolutely not. Okay. Now.
And by the way, let me just point out Ithaca because I've got experience with Ithaca.
Oh, good.
Ithaca is in a lot of ways very similar to Providence in so many ways. I mean, first of all, you've got, obviously Cornell. You've got Ithaca College, which is a fine
institution.
Institution.
Yes.
You've got a host of smaller colleges that surround it. So college life very much permeates everyday Ithaca culture. On top of that, you have one of the earliest and best farmers markets in the nation, and you have this sort of crunchy upstate New York, Saugerties, almost slightly post-Woodstock feel to a city that's clearly in transition and is facing some of the same challenges that we are in the terms of upstate New York, where, quite frankly, manufacturing has fled, and you've got the same attempt at a transition to utilizing world-class universities, a innovation economy.
Correct.
So it's very, very similar. So
Correct.
feel free to develop off of that if you want.
Correct. So let me say that I am not an expert in TSAs, okay? And we could probably spend an entire program, if we really want to get wonky and go into the TSAs. But suffice it to say that TSAs are a critical component. And without TSAs, we certainly would not have a lot of the development. Now, separate that from different kinds of subsidies. Okay, so I don't want to paint a picture that says all subsidies are bad. Because in fact, the kinds of workforce subsidies, for instance, that Stephen Pryor and Commerce through the governor are doing, this may not sit well with you, but I have to tell you, let's just say, it's been very difficult to get serious people to look seriously at Providence. And Wexford is exactly what the doctor ordered right now. And Wexford will beget many, many more of those. And we have learned, shall we say the hard way, through 38 Stadium, how not to do incentives. So hopefully we will make other mistakes, but I like to say, let's make some new ones as opposed to repeating the ones that we've made before.
And briefly, I'll just editorialize.
Go ahead.
Here's my frustration with Subsidies and the Commerce Corporation. By the way, next time you see Stefan, ask him if he likes to bowl. Just ask him that.
Okay.
Tell him you met his bowling partner. There's a story. In a moment, I can't pronounce the word. But Schadenfreude, how do you pronounce that?
Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude.
There you go.
If you were to pick two organizations who are more diametrically opposed politically, you would pick the Libertarian Party and the Commerce Corporation.
I think you're right.
Guess who shared a space for the Christmas parties? Unknowingly.
It must have been at Hope Artiste Village.
It was, let's just say, like I said, ask him about how his bowling game is. And an only in Rhode Island moment. Even Jim Hummel used as year-end summary when they were talking about only in Rhode Island moments. Could the Libertarian Party be scheduled for the same evening as the Commerce Corporation?
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, I don't think they thought it was perfect.
That's perfect.
We certainly had a good time. But my frustration with Subsidies is this.
Okay.
You could tell I'm a free market obsessive.
I could tell.
All right? And ultimately, when, and the cliche has always been pick winners or losers, but I'll briefly go a little deeper. When you have the spectacle as you do in Rhode Island, particularly with potential stadium, 38 studios, where you are literally taking tax dollars away. We always say as libertarians, taxation is theft. And the reason we say that, we're being kind of cutesy, but we're not. Because ultimately you pay taxes, you are coerced into paying taxes. People don't do so voluntarily. So when that tax money, and you have the situation, for example, potentially in the stadium, where the tax dollars of businesses who own entertainment facilities in the Blackstone Valley will, however indirectly, but at the same time directly, go to a potential economic behemoth / competitor. That's the problem I have, because I envision a different world where the Commerce Corporation acts as, and I think they're starting to do this a little bit to their credit. How much of it is politically motivated, I'm not sure, but where the Commerce Corporation simply acts as a facilitator and a disseminator of information and gives informational support to emerging businesses, technologies, as opposed to deciding who's going to get the mana and who's not. And that's the problem I have, because you pervert marketplace. I envision a Rhode Island where an adherence to studied free market principles will create an environment where everyone can come in and doesn't have to approach the shrine of government, or as Rudy Cheeks would call it, halitosis hall, and give their Hosanna moment and beg, as we say in libertarian circles, if it may please the Queen, or I'm sorry, if it may please the Crown,
Oh, thank you.
may I please might thine approach, and at which point we all have to chant dilly dilly and move on. I just want us to get, and just bear with me one more second. Every now and then, I am privileged to be invited on the Lively Experiment with Jim Hummel. Just an amazing show now at this point. He has taken it, re-engineered it, tinkered with it.
He's done a great job.
Yeah, there's an amazing chemistry there, because Dan Kelch was a great host. Jim's just added that extra little special sauce. So there's it's never going to be the Sports Center equivalent of Talking Heads, but there's a little bit of conflict there. There's a little bit of So, we just have to get away. The obsession I was on last week, and the conversation obviously had to do with the census, because the way the census would be counted might materially impact our congressional count.
Yes.
And according to Pablo from Rhode Island Public Broadcasting, Rhode Island Latino Radio, who used to be head of Planned Parenthood, pointed out that we are 157 people away from losing a congressional seat. Now, they didn't realize that would give me inspiration, but we are so hooked as a society here on the teat of government. Just the umbilical cord between government and wealth creation in this state is so perverted that at any level we continue that. I just think this, I can't think of a better analogy, so just please excuse me. But this town needs an enema, all right? It needs a governmental, it just needs to say enough, because it's our crutch. I could spend hours talking about this, but we are so hooked on government, and we just seem to be incapable of making decisions that would at any level materially impact the ability of government to continue. And true free market innovation takes place where people create for the sake of creation and the sake of creating wealth, not being reverse engineered to coexist with government. And now I will get off my soapbox and turn the mic back to you.
Oh dear. Well, I'm gonna sort of leave that alone, which probably would be the best thing that I could do right now. But I am going to say that commerce has made great strides in going in the direction that you are now speaking.
I hope so. That'd be great.
So, all right. So let's leave that. So, and another time we'll pick that one up. How's that? Okay.
You're very polite.
It's all right. Okay. So now let me take this thing back, because the point of this is to tell our citizens what we need, because we need to hear from them. We need to know that we are doing all these things, and that is what people want, right? They want us to continue to advocate in the way that we are advocating for the betterment of all, okay? So that it's not one wealthy person who has the benefit of that fabulous piece of land and
Right.
those wonderful tax subsidies. It's what's best for all. Okay, so let me just explain how this process is going to move forward, because we need people to help. So in order to get this, the next thing that has to happen is we have to get a zoning change. No, we don't have to get a zoning change. Fane has to get
Right.
a zoning change.
Right.
Okay.
Who we?
Oh, that would not be this person.
Right.
But Fane needs to get a zoning change. And in order to do that, they go to something called the City Plan Commission on April 25th over at 444 Westminster Street on the first floor. And they then will need to literally, hopefully, show us what the tower is going to really look like, because God knows we haven't seen it yet, the single tower, and explain why the City Plan Commission ought to give them a thumbs up in sending it off to the City Council, because it is the Providence City Council that will decide whether or not.
That's not good.
Ah. Whether or not they get this zoning change.
Right.
So you understand from whence I come.
Absolutely.
Okay.
As we like to say in the coalition, that we need to go to that meeting and utter the immortal words, one of my favorite philosophers of all time, of course, Ricky Ricardo, and say, "Splain, Lucy, splain."
Explain. We need to explain this.
Yeah.
Do we not?
Yes.
But let me now say that Brown University just absolutely modified their performing arts
Right.
building. And why did they do that? Because the people came out.
Overwhelming public pressure.
That's exactly
And
right.
for people who weren't familiar with that situation, there were several beautiful buildings that were going to be uprooted to create this performing arts center, and this is where it's interesting, because when you think of universities, you don't think of private property rights, but one of the things that makes Providence great is College Hill.
Correct.
If you start to rip at College Hill and turn it into some brutalist architectural nightmare, you no longer have College Hill. So they attempted to do something, and the market responded.
They did, but in fairness, they had a donor who had a vision, and this is not a performing arts center per se. This is classroom space, and this is very much needed. Okay, Brown now has an entire department called the Brown Arts Initiative, and we need this building, right? But we also need to maintain that character of College Hill. And the Preservation Society under Brent Runyon, okay, mobilized, brought together the community. I testified, lots of people testified. And what did we get? We got a better building. We now are in a position where none of those buildings need to be torn down. We are going to lose a beech tree. But you know what? They're going to plant a lot of other wonderful trees. But that was collaboration, and that was Brown really, really stepping up to the plate, doing the right thing, and doing it extraordinarily well.
Right. No, and I think folks, clearly there's been this mood up on Smith Hill for quite a while from folks outside of Providence that Brown is one of the sources of all our evils, when, as I like to point out, if it wasn't for Brown and RISD, we'd be Bridgeport.
That's exactly right. And you know what? I think you should say that again, because the sad reality is that most people have no idea what Brown and RISD contribute. And yes, they pay taxes in lieu, okay? And yes, they contribute, but people have no idea what they do for this city, for literally putting people, interns, into government positions, to literally supporting every single neighborhood, every single activity. You name it, they are there. They are always there.
Right, and the standard of living that we enjoy is in the unique culture that we alluded to in the beginning of our segment, is largely based on the presence of a handful of world-class academic institutions. And much like you can no longer create the kind of open space that's available from I-195, you know, you can create all the online universities in the world you want. You can invent a college. There's the most limited space in the world is the Ivy League, and you know they aren't opening up any new Ivy League schools anytime soon.
As they say about Waterfront, they're not making any more of that, and
Yep.
they're not making any more of those either.
And RISD, again,
Is a gem.
And for everyone who complains about this building or that building, we're down the street from what would have been an abandoned bank building
Thank you.
at the end of, if you will, the banking crisis, which is now the finest art library on the planet.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
And they made an extraordinary decision when they crossed the river, when
Right.
they decided to literally put residents in that building.
Right.
And it revived downtown.
Oh, I know, absolutely, and that was no small step because the infrastructure requirements necessary to do that, beyond the actual addition of the building and the work necessary to convert that building, because again, much like the Superman building, that building was not well suited, if you will, initially.
Hardly.
No, so I mean, and so philosophically, you kind of broke through the walls, if you will, that surround around RISD and Brown, and you reached into this neighborhood, which would have been bereft in the absence of that.
Correct.
So the notion that universities are a problem here is, I think the term fallacy is probably a little too polite.
I do too. In fact, any time someone says something like that in my presence, I'm just about jump down their throats because it is so far from the truth. And the same way that RISD did that to downtown, Brown did that to the jewelry district.
All right.
Okay? A perfect analogy. And Brown is doing extraordinary things there, from the med school to the biomolecular lab to the amazing things that are happening there right now. Okay? All right. So anyway, so we're back to the city council, because
Right.
people need to understand that. So April 20th.
I don't know if it's possible to understand the Providence City Council.
But try.
They are an interesting bunch.
Okay, I'm not going to go there either. Okay, so even though you want me to. So first there's CPC on April 25th, and we need everybody to come out and speak. And that is a public forum. That is a time where everyone from the surrounding neighborhoods, from every place in Providence, comes out, because guess what? Spot zoning can happen in any neighborhood.
Right.
It can happen in Elmhurst. It can happen anywhere.
It can even happen in, no one's listening, right? Wayland Square.
Wayland Square, okay? Yes, it can. Okay.
But as an aside, in Wayland Square, you've now got empty commercial buildings for the first time in quite a while.
Correct.
Multiple, which are just quite honestly ripe for short-sighted redevelopment because of the nervousness and the expense of maintaining those empty properties.
Correct.
Okay.
Please don't do that. Let's if you're listening out there, please don't do that. Don't make those short-term decisions because they don't end well. Okay. So back on the ranch, that city council meeting, right? Okay, so it's going to come out of CPC and they're going to say thumbs up, thumbs down, or be neutral. Just send it along without a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Right.
Okay. What happens? We have 15 council people, men and women, 15 neighborhoods, about as different as you could ever imagine.
Right.
From a socioeconomic standpoint, okay? In every other way.
Right.
Totally different. Okay. Different needs, different concerns,
Different politics.
different politics. Okay. So, what is this about? This is about having everyone come out, call their council person, tell them how they feel about this tower, about the idea of spot zoning, about the idea of subsidizing luxury housing, okay? We need to hear from all of those people. Your council people need to hear from you. The mayor needs to hear from you. Everybody needs to hear from you. So 15 people, so we need 8 of those people, right? To see it our way.
Mm-hmm.
That's not our way, that's do the right thing.
Right.
Okay? Because we need to do the right thing, because we're not doing this for us. We are doing this for the kids and for the grandkids.
Does the rejection of this at the planning level prevent it from going to from city council, or is it just simply put a negative stamp on it?
It's sort of a negative, makes it a little bit of a tougher lift, let's just say. But let's say that the 8 feel that they don't think this is a good idea, then of course the mayor has the ability to what? To override.
Mm-hmm.
And then we need 10.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a really heavy lift.
Right.
Okay, so.
Because you'll always hear, and again, I'll say this so you don't have to go here.
Okay.
You're always going to hear the job. This will provide, it's almost like a standing headline. There's a journalist in Boston on the radio who talks about a standing headline. A standing headline is something that they just have to fill in the empty blanks. This fill in the blanks will provide so many blank jobs, regardless of the long-term implications of making a poor decision. You know, and enough people who are directly related to those short-term jobs, and they aren't short-term jobs.
Right.
Those short-term construction jobs.
Right.
Will have the collective nervous breakdown, quite frankly, that you see revolving around the construction of a new stadium in Pawtucket.
Correct. Now, let's talk about construction jobs, okay? Right now, the construction industry is blessed. And one of the problems we have right now is that construction costs are rising. And so what does that do? It makes these development pro formas even more difficult because financially they don't work anymore. Okay, so how many permanent jobs will the Fane Tower create? Well, when RES did their study, the answer is 19. That's jobs for the residences, right? Maybe 40 to 50 jobs if in fact there's retail on the ground. But the problem with this tower is that it needs to be built on a pedestal or a podium or a plinth or whatever you want to call it. It's about 5 stories high. That's very high. And the same way that we didn't want that stadium wall to block from Dyer and the river and the park.
Right.
Well, that pedestal and podium is going to do exactly the same thing. And why do they need that? Because they need parking. Because you can't sell or rent luxury housing if you don't have garage in-house parking.
Wow, brighter brights, whiter whites. All this and tax subsidies too.
And tax subsidies too. So I would ask all of you to help Providence continue the mission, that preservation mission, that doing in fact what the I-195 corridor was supposed to do, right? It was supposed to quote Stephen Pryor, the innovation complex at Wexford will serve as an engine of our economy, fostering and spurring significant business and job growth.
Okay.
That's what we need.
Is there any recourse at any level? This is one of the great areas of confusion for those of us in the stands. The federal government, it strikes me, whenever there is their own subsidies, whenever they set out requirements for redevelopment, highway issues, there's always parting gifts and there's always responsibilities. Is there any recourse at the federal government if for, to me, spiritually, is a clear violation of the intent of the I-195 corridor?
Okay, so let me try to address that. And I don't know how we're running long or short, but the
All the time you
park one of the requirements in this, because this was federal monies, right? That started this wonderful thing, allowed it to happen. Part of it was that we had to have so much green space
Right.
in hundreds of thousands of square feet. Okay. If we go below that amount of green space, then the feds step in. Okay? But recently, President Ruggiero sponsored a bill in the Senate, and I went and testified, and they have taken a chunk of the park in order to pivot the way the Fane Tower is going to sit on parcel 42. But because we did not trigger that bottom line number,
Right.
the feds did not or could not or would not step in right now, okay? If that happened, they could step in. Now, what other recourse do we have? There's, of course, legal recourse, because spot zoning is a very, very, very explosive subject on a national level. And so we have all of those things at our disposal.
I'm curious, what are the, and it's kind of a question from left field, the grow smart people here in Rhode Island, how have they, and I don't know the answer, you're not supposed to ask a question you don't know the answer, I don't know the answer to this. The grow smart people, how have they weighed in on this?
They haven't yet, but I will tell you that we are making, Building Bridges is making presentations in every neighborhood. We are speaking with every single council person. We are bringing them the facts so that they can make better decisions. Providence Preservation is a partner, as they always are, and they participated in the survey, and I'm just going to give you a little snippet of the survey, because we sent this survey literally by way of email to about 2,500 individuals. And it went to the mailing lists of the Downtown Neighborhood Association, the Jewelry District Association, the Fox Point Neighborhood Association. We are the abutters, okay? So clearly, we are the people who are most impacted.
Right.
Okay. So then you create a little ring around that, and you go to the College Hill Neighborhood Association, and you sort of make the rounds that way. So we included College Hill in this. We included the mailing list for the Providence Preservation Society. And what we got back is 4-1 oppose the Fane Tower.
Right.
We did this by zip code. When we did it to the immediate surrounding zip codes, it was 6-1 against.
It sounds familiar.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Scott Wolf has not yet weighed in. And
Of Grossmart, yeah.
Of course, right. And we are asking absolutely everyone, from the architects to the planners to every single person who can come to 38 Tower, leave a comment, ask a question, okay? This needs to be collaborative. This needs to be grassroots. This is about our city, about our pedestrian bridge, about our park, about what's best for the I-195 corridor and the Jewelry District.
Yeah. You vote, and just like we have a website, fightthestadium.com, you have an opportunity
That's right.
to vote, because you will not be afforded the opportunity to vote.
And we only get one shot at getting this right.
Right. And I would imagine the Fane people have made. Now, it's interesting too, because you haven't seen, or at least as someone who is not a resident of the city but spends a lot of time in the city, you haven't seen any sort of charm offensive or PR on this from the Fane people. You've seen, I have no doubt that they've lobbied extensively within the halls of the Hall of Doom, if you will, City Hall. But at the same token,
Even bigger halls. Never mind.
well, my next question was going to be, and if you're referring to, as we like to say here, Halitosis Hall, as an all credit to Rudy Cheeks, who is the grandfather and the comic genius of independent media in the state. God bless Rudy Cheeks. If you don't know Rudy Cheeks, you probably read him in Philippe and Jorge.
That's right.
But what involvement, if any, does Halitosis Hall, I'm sorry,
Okay, let's tell everybody what you're talking about here.
the Smith Hill.
Thank you. That's much better. That's much
You're determined
better.
to make me more polite, aren't you?
You must be polite, okay? Listen, this is all about civility.
Mm-hmm.
We can agree to disagree, okay? Now, is that okay?
Yes.
All right, okay.
You can,
No, I didn't do that, but we are going to be polite.
okay.
Because God knows this country right now can use a whole lot more
Courtesy.
courtesy
Respect.
and respect.
And to that end,
Yes.
I will compliment Speaker Mattiello, getting all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, because he, despite being vilified by a great deal of the state leading up to the past year or so, has displayed more restraint and more of an open mind towards both sides of the issue than I believe any other significant politician involved in the whole stadium issue.
And I would like to echo that, and
Mm-hmm.
I would like to say to the speaker that I personally appreciate what he has done, and he has shown a different side of himself, and we appreciate the fact that he has been open-minded, and he has been civil, and he has been, shall we say, open to listening to everyone.
Right, and he has become very quickly, particularly in the last year or so, the most accessible speaker in recent, or I'll say in modern Providence history, Rhode Island history.
Correct.
He is, without any question. Now, of course, if he goes the wrong way, I'll be incredibly frustrated, but he's elevated the game.
He has.
And
he deserves credit for that.
absolutely.
He absolutely deserves credit
And
for that.
that's not me trying to patronize anybody. It's a frank reality that most of these decisions, I go back all the way to DeAngelis, in terms of speakers, most of these decisions were made in the past, and perhaps it took 38 Stadium to drive the education home that that you've got to reach out to stakeholders in every single issue. And the governor would do so well when she looks at whether it be the Burrillville situation or any of these situations to display that same level of collegiality. How about that? Is that a good term?
It is, but in fairness, okay, in order to be the governor here, takes, let's just say, an extraordinary person with a pretty big toolbox.
Okay.
Okay, and I think the governor has done personally. I think that I'm a Rhode Islander, born, having lived other places, but I can tell you in my lifetime, and it's the same as your lifetime, I have hope for the first time. I really do.
Okay.
And I think that our best years in Rhode Island are right now ahead of us. And I give her enormous credit for what she has done, because the pressure that is brought to bear every single day is extraordinary.
There's an enormous amount of money and political real estate at stake here, both on a national and international level, as well as a local level. And at the same time, there have never been more eyes watching every step, ready to pounce.
Absolutely. But you know something? This is not just about construction jobs. This is about forever jobs, okay? And that's the difference. And people have to understand that. It's not, it has to be for everybody.
Right.
Everybody has to win this time around.
Right, there is a blank canvas that is only partially drawn upon
That's right.
in that piece of real estate that will have extraordinary impact. I mean, if you look around us, if you look at the Superman building, for example, the obstacles to changing that piece of real estate are enormous, not just because of an ownership that's got far too much invested in it, but just the logistics, the necessity to overcome past investment mistakes. There's just, and yet, you know, if Mr. Fane wants to use the word iconic, we have enough.
We already have that.
We got enough iconic right now.
Thank you very much. We have the Superman building. And let me say that I still believe we can find a way to do the right thing by that building.
I believe it can happen as well. The point, the example I will always use is something called the Wang building up in, and are you familiar with it?
No, but I think I know what you're going to say.
All right, up in the at the confluence of Route 3 and 495, there used to be a building called the Wang building. It's still there.
Yeah.
Wang was a software company and hardware company that found itself in business. They use the term eating your young, out innovated. They were the first real widely accepted word processor post typewriter. This is back from the
Dark Ages.
the days of yore. And a company came along called Multimate one day, and they managed to make a compatible piece of PC software, sounds familiar, that looked exactly, felt exactly, typed exactly like a Wang word processor. And understand, Wang word processor was a $1 billion plus company that their equipment was everywhere. They were the first wave post typewriter.
Yep.
We have a young man here in the room with us who's looking at us and going, typewriter?
Hello?
So
It's kind of like the phones that you used to, you know,
Yeah.
the big black things.
there's a
remember
term called drop it. Yeah.
No, never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and there's a real estate point to this. So, obviously the company fell on hard times and eventually failed. And you had this albatross, and that was the word used back then, of a building, huge. And you know, you talk about it kind of, it was
Monstrous.
right there. And ultimately, the owners of it failed financially. And someone came along and redeveloped it. Building's there. My understanding, I haven't seen, it's become so part of the life that it's no longer an issue.
That's
My
right.
understanding is it's close to 100% occupancy
Yep.
at Boston-style rents.
Yep.
Because, and here's the key, the marketplace was allowed to do its work.
Correct.
Someone failed, they weren't able to muster the resources to maintain the building, and Ride Out at that point in time was 4 or 5 bubbles ago.
Yep.
Someone came along and bought it on the cheap,
Yep.
reinvested in it, and lived literally happily ever after. Because the building is worth a fortune now. And when, you know, in terms of 1980 style dollars, I forget what they bought it for. The point being is that can happen anywhere. And this to me is the missing special sauce in Rhode Island. We refuse to allow the market to work. We are so post, and this, I'm going to dig deep here into our Rhode Island history, post RISDIC. We are so afraid of letting market forces do what market forces need to do that we will protect ourselves into oblivion at some point. And if taxpayer dollars are allowed to bail that out, the building needs to fail on its own, or the current owners need to, again, to quote...
Take a haircut.
Well, exactly. As Vincent A. Buddy Cianci used to like to say, they have to come Coco.
There you go.
You come Coco, you have the, down south they call it a come to Jesus meeting, up here we call it a sit down, all right? You look yourself in the eye and say, can I do it or not? Next.
They paid too much.
Too much. That's simple. So when I look at someone who's going to do iconic,
We have iconic.
I got Federal Hill is iconic. College Hill is iconic.
Exactly.
Super Building, maybe a little iconic. McCoy Stadium, to a lot of people, is iconic.
And the Superman building with a wonderful restaurant up there and a wonderful lounge
It's going to take
and a mixed-use building,
Mhm.
it can be done.
It's going to take someone with a lot of gumption and a lot of money. But you know what? That's out of great opportunities come great success.
Absolutely.
And that ultimately is to wind this all the way back as to why you're here tonight. That's why this needs to die. My words.
Well, I tried to do a lot of alliteration on the word, and it wasn't going well. So, so that's how we came up with the 38 Tower, let's just say, which, you know, I actually think was probably a better idea in the first place. No comment.
When we came up with 38 Stadium, when a bunch of people came up simultaneous with 38
Right.
Stadium,
Wasn't that brilliant?
there was magic in the room, and I have to say it drives them nuts.
I know it does.
It makes them loopy. Someone I consider a friend,
Yeah.
Dan York on WPRO. If you just want to call him up and say 38 Stadium, 38 Stadium, 38 Stadium, he'll actually at some point become catatonic.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's just because it makes them insane. But ultimately, and there's an obsession. In fact, the Providence Journal, to their everlasting credit, before the author, the then journalist, now state employee,
Stop, don't go there.
before they did that, they
Okay.
did an article saying why 38 Stadium, when in fact there are structural differences between the two investments.
Of course.
What I point out is that we call it 38 Studios, then we called it 38 Stadium, and now we're calling it 38 Tower, has literally very little to do with how the investment is structured. We call it that, at least I call things that, because it's a testament to the arrogance of certain people in the halls of power who would assume that they can foist these extra governmental business relationships on the taxpayers despite protestations to the contrary. And it's the cultural arrogance in government that will look at an investment like this and say, try to spoon feed us, patronize us, that it's good for you. You just don't know it yet, but it's good for you. And, you know, whether it be the stadium, whether it be this, whether it be Burrowville and what the atrocity that's going on up there. To your credit, you are building a coalition based on information. To the people in Burrowville, they are building a coalition. They built a successful coalition based on information, fact, reason, a little dose of emotion dipped in, but you know what? They're leading with their brains and they're following up with their hearts. And that's what's happening here, and that's what's happened in the stadium. And that's why I believe you are right, that the best days of Rhode Island are in front of us, because the fundamental change in Rhode Island that has to happen first is an educated electorate that is willing to extend themselves into the day-to-day affairs of public office, because they are waking up to the fact that they simply can afford not to.
Thank you. Because guess what? Go back to Margaret Mead. All it takes is a small group of dedicated citizens. There isn't anything they can't do. We have proven it over and over and over again, okay? This is our city, so we need to participate. We need to show up. We need to speak up. We need to stay involved, okay? Because this doesn't happen magically.
Nope, no pixie dust.
No pixie dust.
It's Marty Walsh, now mayor of Boston, in a moment of extreme exasperation, referred to the no Boston Olympics crowd as, a dozen people? I forget the exact quote, a dozen people in a Twitter account. And they managed to change, in what was a moment mixed with other events in Olympic history. I believe that they permanently changed the direction of the Olympic movement. That in their own way, they decided that host cities would no longer be the ATMs of an out-of-control international sports movement that provided profit for the few, privatized success, socialized risk in cities around the world and in the United States that can ill afford that level of failure. So if a dozen people and a Twitter account can do it, damn it, we can do it here in Providence, can't we?
We can. And there's a lesson, an enormous lesson that we should have learned from the kids at Parkland. Look what they have done out of that tragedy.
Kid, if this generation, and I have two daughters who are very early 20s, the hashtag for this show is take it personally. And because we take it very, 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 very personally here. This is a labor of love. If people can even momentarily subsume their day-to-day needs and look beyond that window where they can see the long-term ramifications, implications of this and any one of a dozen or so whack-a-mole style events that are occurring in Rhode Island, which will have long-term consequences for their standard of living, the quality of life. That was what determined when I talked about the run-up in this show, the quality of life issue. Then they can essentially perform the hostile retakeover of their own government. And in doing so, I mean, we know we can do better.
This place is a jewel.
Mm-hmm.
We were given this jewel, and we need to make it better.
Someone that I know who's very religious puts it very well. We are not just citizens; we are stewards.
Correct.
All right, we are stewards of a place, of a people, of a culture, of a society, and our generation. You and I are that kind of in betweener. I'm not a boomer. I refuse to be a boomer. But our generation, it's our responsibility. It's very easy for us because we've got a millennial in the room. It's very easy for us to point to those youths, but it's really what we do that's shaping the youths, and it's what we do, particularly in these years right now, that are going to shape their future. If we hand them a mess, we can't continue to blame them. Right now, it's our responsibility. So.
That it is. And if we want those kids to stay here when they graduate from Brown and RISD and all those other fabulous institutions, well then, damn it, we've got to give them the city they deserve.
Now, we've only got a few minutes left, so the footbridge, we talked about that a little bit.
The pedestrian bridge.
Pedestrian bridge, yes. All right. That was quite the battle.
Oh, it was.
But, to me, it was fascinating because as someone who wasn't involved in it, was familiar with your work in it and your organization's work in it, that to me was kind of a line in the sand, both philosophically and politically here in the city. Because it was clear that you would tolerate nothing less than the completion of that bridge, despite all the roadblocks and all the little indignities thrown in its way.
Correct.
So when will that be complete?
October this year.
Gonna be a big party?
Oh, is there going to be a party? Oh my God, there's going to be a party. And let me say this because I want people to understand that Building Bridges Providence is this little group of people. Brian Heller, Tim Emke, Ethan Giles, Sam Bell, Ann Bergeron, CJ, Olin Thompson, and me. And you can do anything you put your mind to.
And by the way, most of those folks, I know several of them, have demanding jobs, complicated, full lives, and are also simultaneously active in other causes. Dr. Emke is legendary in the stadium movement for being the guy who just quietly, with a great deal of dignity and intelligence, shows up and does all the yeoman's work, the really hard, quiet, behind-the-scenes stuff that you need for an organization like that. And yet here's a gentleman who's, a sophisticated professional with his own life, and yet he manages to contribute. And the same thing can be said for Ethan and the rest of the organization. These are folks who are simply just showing up for one thing. They're every part of their life is driven by this same type of
passion.
Desire to make
passion,
things better.
Commitment. And Sam Bell, every one of them. You cannot. This is a group of very, very busy people.
Sam Bell is running for.
Yes, he is.
For state senate.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
In a crowded field, he has already making significant gains,
Mm-hmm.
both organizationally and, I mean, everybody, Sam Bell is a very recognizable figure in this state.
He sure is.
But his role is going to be pivotal,
Mhm.
and that election is going to be pivotal. People need to get out in the Democratic primary and vote for him and support him. Because here's a guy who, quite frankly, is talented enough and has the bona fides to really go anywhere. And, you know, it's that same spirit, that same passion where he continues to reinvest in the community, regardless of how you feel about his personal politics. And it's funny because he and I are, in a lot of ways, very differently politically. But I'm proud to call him a friend.
Exactly.
And I think he's got a tremendous amount of, and getting his kind of perspective up into the State House. I think even though, like I said, I'm a libertarian, he's a progressive Democrat. You know, I have a lot of respect for his character, and he's a smart guy, even if he's wrong on a couple things.
And so let me say this, that Olin Thompson is the chairman of Building Bridges, and Brian allows us to use his wonderful, wonderful studio as what we call our clubhouse.
Mhm.
And that's where we meet, and that's where, I don't know, sometimes we make magic.
Well, we certainly did tonight. Give us a couple of websites and how people can find out about you, and just reiterate the meeting. And I'll be sharing the 38 Towers website
Okay.
this weekend, along with the tape of this production. So where can folks
Okay.
find more?
So, Building Bridges Providence is, again, you can go online. 38 Tower has its very own website, and we're very proud of that. It's now a .com.
Mhm.
And the Jewelry District Association, phenomenal website.
Mhm.
Go to the JDA website. It will tell you everything that you want to know about what's happening in the Jewelry District.
Mhm.
And this is the one neighborhood that we have the ability to literally recreate.
Mhm.
We are making a new neighborhood.
Right.
And that doesn't happen very often.
The canvas is partially done in this city. There's lots more to paint.
You're absolutely correct. But we need everyone's help.
There you go. It's a mural, right?
It is a mural.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
No, thank you for coming on and spending the evening with us. And it's been a wonderful conversation. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this.
Thank you.
It's good stuff. It's really the spirit of what we're trying to do here on this little production of ours, and independent media across the state. We're blessed in Rhode Island. There is some great indie media. I can just name a few: RI Free Radio. Steve Alquist has got his own production up
That's
right now.
right.
RI
Terrific.
Future, Motif.
Yep. Yep.
And, there's lots of indie media, and of course, and if you will, the mothership here, Go Local Prov,
Yep.
which continues. I mean, through the extreme talents of one Kate Nagel, continues to spend quite a bit of shoe leather on issues that, let's just say, the legacy media, despite its advantages, despite its quote unquote strengths, refuses, or is, and I think somewhat, it's an unfair competition in one sense, because of their format, simply don't have the capacity or the time to drill down into a conversation like we did tonight. There are very few places where you could spend an hour or two,
Correct.
largely uninterrupted by commercial. And of course, I have to thank our wonderful sponsors, airsciences.net, the folks at the folks at Yacht Club Soda, Beacon Shipping and Logistics. We've got a brand new sponsor coming on next week, joining us in spirit this week, that I think people are going to be amazed by. They're going to be on a monthly basis joining us to present the latest in consumer technology for a half-hour segment every month. Osprey is the name of the company. They're one of the premier audio, video, automobile suppliers in New England, and they've chosen to invest in us and invest in the Rhode Island market, and we welcome them to the show, and you're going to read plenty about them on our websites, because if it wasn't for our sponsors, this just couldn't exist.
Absolutely.
And we salute people who are willing to contribute to organizations like yours.
Yep.
And to our sponsors. So on that note,
You're right.
It's thank you so much for coming in.
And thank you for having me.
All right, Sharon Steele. In the post-show production, we'll provide a list of websites,
Good.
things to go to. But what is the one takeaway? What's the big date coming up on 38 Tower?
April 25th. It is a Wednesday. City Plan Commission, 444 Westminster. Come, every single one of you, because our future depends on it.
Yeah, not only figuratively but literally.
Correct.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
I'm going to ask a young man to come up and sit next to me for a few minutes. He's visiting with the coalition tonight, and we're just going to do a little bit of a set change here. Let me help, if you can grab this side. Okay. Here, have a seat, relax for a second. All right, in the waiting couple of minutes of the show, just introduce yourself.
I am Keith Douglas. I'm a senior at Barrington High School, and I have in the past year been interested in the Libertarian Party of Rhode Island.
And so now, this is the first time you joined us on tonight. You've
Yep.
sat dutifully back here. You're doing a project for, you're a senior at Barrington High?
Yep, it's our senior project.
Okay. Just got 3 or 4 minutes, but what did you think?
I'd never seen the show before, other than a couple minutes online, but I thought it was really fun listening to you guys talk about relevant subjects, some stuff I had never heard about before, specifically the 38 Towers. I had never heard of that.
It's a challenge, whether it be young or older, not old, but older. You're seeing firsthand through your sort of immersion, if you will, in the political process, just how many issues there are. We call them onion issues because you can peel away layer after layer after layer, and it just presents new challenges, new obstacles. But that's the excitement about being involved in the community. You get to wherever you live in the future. You get to help make the rules.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit passively by and wait for someone. And your generation in particular, we've had it to me is astonishing because your openness and your willingness to take risks and adventures, just sometimes for the sheer sake of it, is a marked change from folks of my age. It's just really different. I know the senior year is a challenging year. You probably have a lot of decisions to make and all that. So I'm not going to ask you the typical question adults ask seniors in high school. I'll spare you that. But generally speaking, do you have any idea what you want to do?
I want to study political science and education, eventually become a government teacher.
Civics teacher.
Civics teacher.
Excellent. You heard us earlier in the show. Regardless of where you stand on an issue, the absence of a civics education in this country has placed us in real peril. People they don't understand their rights, truly understand their rights, and they don't understand, more importantly, their responsibilities.
Yeah, up until like a year ago, I was not invested in politics or government at all. And I took a government class at the high school, and that's what really threw me into the political field, I guess.
No, that's great that Barrington would actually put kids out and kind of break through the whole high school thing.
Yeah.
You're still having fun at high school, right?
I'm sorry?
You're still having fun at high school, though, right?
Yeah, sure.
You got a couple of good weeks left.
Yeah.
The real world beckons. No, that's excellent. I hope you'll join us in the next few weeks, and
Yes,
get you a little bit more involved in the show and some of the things you can do. And now that you've seen the layout, cool.
All right, thank you.
Oh, hey, thanks for joining us, folks. We're gonna bring the show to an end now. Again, I'd like to thank our sponsors: Beacon Shipping and Logistics at beaconshippingandlogistics.com, Yacht Club Soda at the Yacht Club Bottling Works. All right. airsciences.net, Darryl Gould and his crew providing mold remediation, bioscience, fighting biohazards in houses and buildings and schools across Rhode Island. Darryl's been an instrumental part of keeping this show going. And our new friend at Osprey Electronics, you'll see links to them. We're going to be bringing on the show to lighten things up a little bit and provide really insights on a monthly basis into the latest and greatest in automobile technology and automobile entertainment, and as well as their commercial truck business. All of these folks are great people, great organizations, highly vested in the community, and we ask you, should you need services like that, to avail yourself of these companies. Folks, we are the Coalition, the loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the Gold Local Live Broadcast Center, 90 Way Boston Street, in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, in the Naked City, the city of 1,000 stories. CoalitionRadio.us for this and all other shows live in perpetuity with a simple link to our YouTube page. Please, if you're listening at this point in the evening, after all these hours, please take a moment and subscribe to our YouTube page. It's very important to us right now. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, where you can like our page, and of course on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_Radio. We'll be bringing back to life over the next few weeks as the Billionaire Baseball Boys Club, Pawtucket Red Sox, Wet Dream Investment, Personal Vanity Play, taxpayers subsidize an economic bomb, comes back to life again for yet another shot. Folks, it ain't going to go away anytime soon. And of course, that Twitter account is at Pawtucket is Home. Next week, we're going to be diving back into some of the issues the past few weeks. We hope to be covering Energy again, giving folks a sort of a wake-up call as to where we stand on Energy. Of course, we'll be talking about FOSTA and SESTA and decriminalization. There is movement again in the form of a referendum potentially to address the legalization of cannabis. You've got 38 towers, 38 stadium, 38 studio. I wish I even had more time. But stay tuned. And again, as we like to say on the Coalition, please take it personally. We'll see you next week.